Holy shit, do I have less words, but more just like emotional noises. Shit, like ah.
Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave, review of House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 3. This is the WolfCast. We will not spoil anything past Game of Thrones Season 5. I am your host today, Sir Patrick the Tall. I am joined here today by Bina.
Hey everybody, it's Bina 007 on the Discord server.
And also Elle.
Guys, it's Elle. Also on YouTube, Black Pearl Bravos.
Also, we have Kevin.
Hello, it's Nuncle Kevin, and I'll spoil irrelevant text.
Oh, cool.
The Mystery Knight is actually about a Blackfire plot.
Oh, damn it. Hannah.
Sorry, it's Winged Shadow on the Discord server.
We are also graced by Jock's presence.
I guess I'll spoil random academic texts that are obscure and completely nonsense that go in reference to House of the Dragon.
We will look forward to that then. We also have, of course, Michael.
Hey, Khal Wadege on the Discord.
And lastly, lastly, Marie.
Hi everyone, it's Mary. Nymeria on the forums, Discord, whatever.
So this was a very good episode, I think. It's an episode where we see a battle, which is good. We see some politicking, which is also good, and some character development, definitely. So if I was to ask you, Bina, what would your Lemoncake rating for this episode be?
It's not good. And I feel that when I was listening to our brothers in arms over at Dragoncast, and Katie was really against who are these people who don't like this, who are bored. I was like, oh, Katie, it's me. That's who it is. And I found this a real disappointment after the first two episodes, which I think I ranked in the fours. I would give this a 2.5. And I found myself asking, what of this could have been skipped over? What of this was obvious? So we can get into it in our discussion, but I found a lot of this just, we get it. She can't be queen because she's a girl. We get it. The dad's vacillating. There's a battle, which I thought was a bit nonsensical. I don't know. This was a very meh episode for me, but I'm curious to see what you'll think.
Oh.
I feel like I'm being very stingy with lemon cakes, especially really with the last two episodes. And I believe I rated those a 4, but I'm going to have to go lower this one with 3.75 if I can parse them out like that. And some of what Bina just mentioned, I also kind of was like, what could we had skipped? More so in the second half. Absolutely enjoyed the battle. I think that's how I was able to give it the 3.75 anyway, especially the last act. I kept going on what could have been skipped in the first half. So the reason why it's lower the previous for the last two episodes.
Kevin?
All right. This is my first time getting the podcast about an episode, and I really like the first two, but I think I have to give this one a 3. I just felt like there were some really great moments. I thought that a lot of the main themes of A Song of Ice and Fire rang true in a lot of ways. There were a lot of sort of the concepts that George likes to play with, like the cost of power and victories feeling hollow sometimes, and a really good Knights of Summer moment, I thought, with Rhaenyra on the dragon. But the way the battle scene played out, to me, was very late Game of Thrones-esque. It didn't build suspense and resolve in a very realistic way, I felt, and that really takes me out of an episode. It was almost a red flag to me.
Okay. Michael.
Kevin, damn it, you stole all of my lines. I have to also give this a 3 out of 5 lemon cakes. Lavish but rather slow hunt scene, for which I have to deduct at 1 full lemon cake for the bonkers tactics that ended this episode in the battle. And I would say this was outright a red flag for me, wondering, like, is this how future battles are going to take place? Oh, it was, yeah, I was kind of not shocked, but I was just wondering what was going on at the end.
What about you, Marie?
I actually quite liked it. So now I'm feeling stupid for liking it, but that's fine. I guess I'd give it a 4 because I don't have a very strong opinion against it. I liked seeing more of Rhaenyra. I liked seeing a bit more dragons. Actually, I think I might be confusing episodes 2 and 3 in my head because I watched them back to back. So yeah, I also agree with your points. And I hated the animal violence in all this because I really prefer seeing people killing other people than people killing animals. Uh, but anyway, yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I feel bad for everyone involved because they're all so doomed.
Well, how about you, Jock?
I also liked it. I'm a bit of the opposite to like the battle was good, but the last wasn't so good. I really liked the last. The battle was a bit disappointing for me. I feel like I'm already fed up with dragons. I feel like they're already oversaturated. Like in the books, they were sort of like nuclear bombs, whereas in this, they're literally all over the place. So I find that quite annoying. Again, with lots of the violence, that could have probably been toned down a bit, but I quite liked more like the acting with the hunt. Like I like seeing the Lannisters again, and also I really like seeing pugs in Westeros. I'm not sure how like the selective breeding in Westeros works, how they have figured out how to selectively breed for pugs, but haven't realised that incest is bad yet. So quite an interesting development in terms of like their genetic understanding, but still cool to see a pug in Westeros.
Very
So I'll
interesting. Yeah,
so I'll
so
give it a 5.
a 5. That's good. Yeah, well, let me round it out then. I also liked this episode. I think I liked it more than the other two. And I'm saying this not because of the fighting scene, although I was thoroughly entertained for the most part until I started, looking at the details about, why were they so surprised about dragons and stuff like that. But apart from that, I was entertained by the stepstones bits, and when it came to Viserys and Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole and Jason Lannister, that guy, they were characters that I could either like or dislike or feel empathy with. I think for most part, I'm getting into the characters more now than I was before, and seeing vulnerable sides to them, and getting more actors to the roster. I think that's very good. So I would give it a 4 as well. Hannah.
So mine's not a lemon cake rating so much as a wah, wah, wah. I think there's more I don't like about this episode than I do. I feel like everything that I have liked about the show so far, they changed. Like I really liked the way the weirwood tree in the God's Eye at King's Landing was huge in the first episode, and it's like, did they do a different set, or is it the way they shot it? It seemed really small again. Everything of foreshadowing that they were doing that was neat was kind of stripped away. I just feel like they should have just started the story 20 years later after the casting change. I feel like they're rushing through this at such a pace that the actors aren't even able to keep up with their own character development, and it all felt really forced and false, and I don't care for it. The whole tension between Alicent and Rhaenyra and that pissy little with the minstrel in the Godswood was so contrived, and like you guys were saying, the looks of the battles and things were, there's a couple of shots when Daemon on Dragonback, if I didn't know better, I would have said were from season 8 with him superimposed onto a different dragon body, but the action of it was borrowed from that, and it's not a high quality. They should have either taken the time to tell the full story or just jumped ahead to when Viserys is dead and the princess and the queen. I'm not liking it. I'll give it a chance still, but I didn't. This episode sucked it out for me.
Elle, you had a comment?
Just really quickly, I can acknowledge the battle was probably more of a Dragon fan service, action sequence service than as opposed to, kind of moving a plot along or really integral to the part of the story. Absolutely. But one observation that I did have, I was watching with my husband Unsullied, and in the beginning when Daemon comes and with Caraxes right there to confront the crab feeder. He just kind of made the mention of like that's a dragon. How are they losing and how are they having such a hard ass time? Doesn't look like much of a fight or much of a battle for them. And the whole nuclear weapons thing, dragons are they're nukes. What's the problem? And it kind of reminded me of the Dornish Wars, where Aegon the Conqueror and how the Martells and their guerrilla style kind of combat fighting was such a pain in the ass to Aegon and to the crown, and how that was something a dragon did not help at all in that situation. So, with the triarchy fighters kind of melting back into the cave and then kind of coming out and melting back. I mean, and that one scene where Caraxes is breathing fire in this little narrow hole, and it looked very ineffectual and kind of had them looking like going in circles and chasing their tails and kind of flailing around a bit. So that really kind of brought me back to, that kind of looks like how it went down with the Dornish in the Red Mountains and in the Bone Way. They just had such a difficult time with those kind of guerrilla style tactics that, clearly the Dorne couldn't overcome, dragons and the crown, on its own. So that is kind of what they had to kind of relegate to. So I thought that was right away. It reminded me of the Dornish War.
The only thing I would say in response to that, Elle, which I think it's all great points and probably speaks to your better knowledge of the text than me, was that I had exactly the same reaction as your other half, where I looked at this and thought, how on earth is he mired there for sort of 3 years when he has dragons? I mean, either he's supremely incompetent. I mean, it just nothing about both the sort of top-down strategy level macro situation of what's going on there, or the sort of the way they choreographed the micro battle made sense to me. And I feel that you shouldn't have to know about like some history of Dornish sort of guerrilla wars to get why this doesn't work, because this to all intents and purposes just looks like the sort of the Normandy landings, right? It's just a beach invasion of an island. This is just China taking on Taiwan. This shouldn't be that hard for the casual or indeed the deeply inset viewer to understand. And it's one of the reasons I really marked down this episode.
I'll add to that, if the crab feeder is stuck in the caves, then he's not doing the thing that's a menace to the realm. Like he's not controlling the shipping lane. If he's having to hide in the caves from the dragons for months and years on end. So that does kind of lend one to think that how could they be like, I can understand how they can't like finish the deed, but they shouldn't be outright losing, that they're worried about themselves being fed to the crabs and all that. But I think the bigger thing for the battle for me was just the way that it was choreographed is probably the right word. And I thought it was interesting that Marie was not as hard on it, having not watched the later seasons of Game of Thrones, just because bad battle choreography and sort of like making the main characters wear gigantically thick plot armor was just a hallmark of the show after the books. Like, without spoiling anything, I mean, it's just bad choreography. Like, I think about early in Game of Thrones and early in the books, Jon talking to Mance Rayder, and how much suspense is right there without having to have him constantly stand and volleys of arrows go around his entire body, right? Like, you build that suspense in a realistic way. And it was the same thing with Daemon. He walks out by himself and a whole army charges him, and arrows are being notched and flung at him, and he's just fine. Nothing hit, he gets hit by a couple, but he still can fight. And it's just like, I don't know, that kind of stuff really takes me out of an episode, because I love Lord of the Rings, and you accept that the main characters are overpowered in Lord of the Rings, but it's one of the attracting things about this universe that they're not. And Daemon, that whole way that played out just takes me right out of what I love about this universe.
Yeah. And it didn't help that really nothing came of that anyway. Crab Feeder ended up being quite underwhelming.
Yep.
I really would have preferred a staggered approach to this war, where at the start of the episode, say, they're just annihilating these ships, burning them up. Then, as you get later cut-ins back to the War of the Stepstones, they mention that, oh, they're not fighting us directly now. They've learned to run away when they see the dragons, and they're resorting to guerrilla tactics. And then by the end of the episode, it's like, oh, we're having a problem of whack-a-mole where we can't keep the stepstones under lockdown. That's causing trouble for us. Like, that would have been an interesting progression to show the limitations of the dragons, but we got none of that. Yeah.
Well, should we move into it then? So I've chosen to instead of doing scene by scene and place by place, I've chosen to divide it into our main characters, that being Rhaenyra, Viserys, Otto Hightower, Alicent, and Daemon last. But we've talked a lot about Daemon, but we'll round up by talking again about it. So I'll start out by giving a primer, and then we can talk about Rhaenyra and the scenes she was in. So the Princess of Dragonstone, Rhaenyra, is even more estranged to her father, the king, 3 years later. She receives an order to join the royal hunt, but is hunted herself, first by an overeager Lannister, secondly by a boar. She deals with both even chooses to spare the king of the Kingswood. Back at the Red Keep, she again has an earnest conversation with her father, in which she is promised the realm and the ability to choose her own king consort. Well, thanks, Dad. Okay, so she is miffed even 3 years later, and seems like she's not really talked to anyone for 3 years.
I don't think she's talked to no one, but I think her conversations with Alicent and Viserys have been limited, let's say.
Yeah, and I think they make a point to say she hasn't been around Daemon in a long time, and that's like when you think about who she can relate to at court, it's Daemon, and they have this thing in between them right now. So that wasn't really explicitly stated in the book, but I thought it was a really good thing for the show writers to pick up on, that Rhaenyra had this period of being very kind of alone at court after her mother died, and Viserys doing whatever. So I really like that direction they went. I think it made a lot of sense.
Also, maybe showing a bit of her isolation, disassociation with everything at court, and her father and Alicent and her brother.
Yeah, and maybe this just is foreshadowing that she does take offense quite easily, and will stay angry for a long while, and not necessarily seeking any reconciliation, even for a long while after.
Yep, and she's so guarded talking to Viserys. Even even when he opens up, she does not let her walls down at all.
How about that Lord Jason Lannister? I started out by just writing he's giving some weird looks, and then it went into, oh boy, yuck, and then
Yeah.
Real scumbag alert.
Yeah.
Can I just say something quickly before we go into Jason Lannister, who is obviously a dirtbag, which is another thing I didn't like about this episode, is it felt like once Rhaenyra lost Alicent, she had no other friends. And how realistic would it be? I mean, even if it was only ambitious people trying to court her for their own advantage, this is the announced heir to the kingdom. Surely she'd have ladies in waiting, she'd have other confidants. I mean, I get narratively they're trying to isolate her, but it just felt, I don't know, bizarre. I mean, she's just wandering around basically on her own. I just felt that was clumsy.
I wonder how different it was for a Targaryen in that situation compared to like Marjorie Tyrell, right? Like, because one thing we know about Rhaenyra from the books, and we've seen in the shows, she likes to just go ride her dragon. So maybe she just kind of already has a lonely streak and a penchant to just go away on her own, that sort of reduces that element. I agree there should be some, but I don't know that she would have found a confidant or not.
I mean, I think she isolated herself more than anything else, and I also think that 3 years jump is not good, because they have to show us, like at the beginning of the episode, I was like, I want to see Rhaenyra's reaction to the wedding and the conflicts and the tension because of that, but it doesn't really make sense 3 years later that she would still be that angry and that alone. the issue is there. It's not that she's alone. It's that she's still alone after 3 years.
I really agree with Bina here because, and this was like one thing that just really got me, the tension between, so they paint Alicent's character as like bitchy and high-minded of herself and not her friend. It's like, why ever play it from the angle that they were friends then? Why show us that? And then Rhaenyra is just kind of acting spoiled, really, and it doesn't make me feel any kind of way about either of the two characters. It's not a good take on things, and this episode really makes me think they could have started the show in 109 when Daemon comes back. They could have done a big prologue for the first episode, a good 20-minute long
Maybe this
prologue.
is their prologue. You've got unlimited money. Maybe they feel they can take their time. The other thing I would say is it doesn't reflect well on Otto Hightower if he's meant to be this grand strategist who I suspect will turn out like Tywin Lannister to have greater opinions of his own strategy than the reality. Because if you saw, your end game is you want your grandchildren on the throne. You know that there's no rest. You think on one hand the fact that they have penises, ultimately they will prevail. But you know that she is the nation's delight, etc. Wouldn't you try and cozy up to her and make her feel like, hey, it's your best friend, your dad's happy, this is best for the realm? Wouldn't you try and like bring her into the fold? I mean,
Right.
obviously he then does with some cockamamie marriage scheme, but you would have thought keep your enemies close, your friends close and your enemies closer, that he would have been almost sycophantically trying to cozy up to her, not just leaving her to her own devices, because it's just happenstance that Daemon's off fighting a war and not corrupting and wooing her. I mean, they've left a very powerful woman with the anointed claim just to her own devices. That seems to me tactically very, very dumb indeed.
Well, and they already know that Daemon has a bone to pick with it. So why would you allow tension to be sown? Like that conversation he has with Sir Lionel is great, but I'm sitting there watching like that's a conversation you need to be having with your daughter. And then when they finally get in a room together, they don't have it, and it just feels forced and really out of character. Books aside, I mean, we know what's in the books, but even just within the context of the show, if it was a standalone material, I don't think that I would be over the moon about this. And it was all very acting and just truly unbelievable. It didn't make sense.
I don't agree, but I didn't think that it was bad acting or anything. I think generally I saw the scene as showing him again being the one who tries to please first one group and then another group, and that's showing how weak he actually is as a ruler. And that I think they did it perfectly, and they continue to show him as a weak person and showing Alicent as they're trying to build her up. Definitely, we can we'll get more into that, but showing that he needs help from whomever can offer it. And right now, his most trusted confidant is not working on his side. He needs the random strong to give him good advice, and actually, his wife also gives fairly good advice.
I agree with you, Patrick. I don't think it's bad acting. In fact, I think Paddy Considine is incredibly strong in this series because Viserys could be an incredibly unlikable character, and I think he shows real pathos. A man who understands he's caught between a rock and a hard place, probably quite an empathetic man who evidently feels guilt and regret over what happened to his wife, who realizes that he's being forced to do things he doesn't like, who probably sympathizes with his daughter, but just really wants to shut the whole world out. And I think it's a great portrait. I just think there's some bad writing, not really around his character, but more around fine, isolate Rhaenyra. Is it credible? And also with Otto, I think it has implications for Otto. I think it's just bad writers room planning, to be honest.
Maybe that's why it feels disjointed and
Yeah.
disingenuous to me, because it's
I don't
just
have
not
any
it's not
issue.
developed.
Yeah,
it's
I don't
not a
have any
fleshed out thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you had so much time. I mean, this episode only has 2 plot arcs, right? It has Daemon on Stepstones having another little boy tantrum, and you have Rhaenyra. Those are the 2 stories. And one half of them, I feel the Rhaenyra one is just badly fleshed out, even though it's got basically 30 minutes of screen time. So that's not good.
So I did really like the symbolism around Rhaenyra, though. Like, I mean, I know it connects back to the greater world, but I really kind of love that she killed she kills a boar, and knowing that that's what kills Robert Baratheon in A Game of Thrones, and the fact there's something about the heir being actually being out at the hunt with the king, and she kills the thing that we know later kills another king, that just makes it seem very she is a worthy heir, and even if Kristen Cole helped, it's she's engendering loyalty from the right people, and just something about that, and then coming back with that killed boar, just really to me was sort of this symbolic way of saying she is a worthy heir, which I think plays well with her character in general as we move on in the series, because she is such a she's a very classical Targaryen, right? She's very into the Valyrian history, and her and Daemon speaking High Valyrian to each other. I think that, and that sort of ends up being a lot of the conflict later on, that you feel is you have these more Westerosi Andal Targaryens in the Greens, and then these more Valyrian Targaryen. And so I felt all of that sort of played together, symbolically, to sort of paint who she is as the heir and as the story moves forward.
I will say, Kevin, that is the one part that I did like. Marie, to your point, the animal violence is never comfortable, and I do appreciate that. But there's two pieces of visual symbolism with the boar that I really appreciated. Earlier in the episode, you get this sense of why, she's saying to Kristen Cole, I don't want to have heirs. I don't want to be a broodmare. And it's very Queen Elizabeth I, I'll paint my face white, but hers is painted red. And then as she returns to camp, the blood in her hair, she has that fiery white, hot Targaryen hair with the blood mixed in. And I'm not sure if that was a on purpose choice, but that's what I took out of it. And I did like that.
Well, I like that as well. I mean, it's I didn't, because it's uncomfortable, but and I would rather not have to watch that, but it was very powerful, and I liked the imagery as well.
And in such stark comparison to her father, right? Her father kills the one stag because it's expected of him, and he doesn't have the fortitude as a person to say, this is so messed up. You can tell he doesn't want to do it, and he's indecisive. It takes 2 blows. The way Patty acted it out is fantastic. And then you see Rhaenyra when she sees the White Hart, and just not even you see the decisiveness. She knows there's no reason to harm this animal. It's not attacking us. And just she has the firmness of a strong monarch, and I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, I would actually give this almost the same point. I think that it's obvious to see that they're related. She has aspects of Daemon, and she has aspects of Viserys, but she is a stronger person than her father. I like that they both did find violence distasteful, at least against animals like that. But she chose to defend herself. When you get through that first bit of violence you need to do to defend yourself, it's for her, she sort of succumbed to the violence. It's interesting to see where that will take her, but I think the main thing that those 2 scenes were to show was that they have the same. They are very, very alike. She just is better at the things that the king is expected to, and she's also she's also kingly in the portent that she actually found the white stag.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure I agree with why she doesn't kill it. To me, it's also, what's the message if she kills it? It does mean that she's regal. Does it go with everyone else saying that it's a sign that Aegon is the future king, right? So I'm not sure she cares all that much about not being violent to animals, to be honest. I think it was more recognition between 2 regal characters, and letting the beast go in peace, also because she prefers it if it's a bad omen that they didn't kill white stag on their hand.
Well, didn't she specifically say in the carriage that she dislike harming animals?
She says it more in a, I'm bored with this and I don't like it when they scream like children, rather than, to me, she's annoyed more than she's disgusted with it.
Maybe.
Looking at the Rhaenyra and Viserys arc, which takes up the bulk of this episode, something that I've just realized which bothers me is it's basically a rehash of episode 1. Viserys has done something that Rhaenyra's pissed about, Rhaenyra's pissed, and then at the end of the episode they make up. And that's really all the character development that takes place in this episode for that arc. And when you look at the hunt, the beautiful lavish hunt with the entire court, there were so many characters that I would have loved to get so much more of, like Harwin strong, Larys strong, even Jason Lannister and what a douchebag he can be. But like these are important characters that will play big roles in the dance, and they really just have like one speaking line, and that's about it.
Tywin too. Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Michael. It is very repetitive, and I think I kind of enjoyed it kind of as I was watching it insofar as it's well acted, but I got to the end of the episode and it just felt hollow and empty because I thought, oh, we did that already, right? Why was this here? Why did we not fast forward on this part of the relationship? So, yeah, it's very. It felt to me like wasted precious screen time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't agree. I think
That's okay though, Patrick. That's okay.
yeah. I think I've really liked Viserys and I've really liked Rhaenyra in the way they dealt with it. Yes, I think that of course we could have. It doesn't make that much sense that she went around being angry and alone for 3 years. Of course, I read it, wrote it in my show notes as well. But I think what came out of that was really interesting, and I loved seeing him, almost being Roberty in his way of being a king for a short while. He was, teetering on the edge of acting like Robert Baratheon, and I liked that about it. Because it showed him that with the right sort of counsel, with the right sort of people around him, he can get away from a situation where he ends up. Robert was not surrounded by people who wanted the best for him or the realm.
And I'll add sort of the Robert comparison. Remember that Robert had 15 good years because he had an effective hand. And I mean, I know Bino and past casts has talked about seeing like government actually somewhat working. Like, yeah, Otto has his scheming, but he is helping the realm run somewhat. Like there's maybe some rot in the realm, but it's not like it's not like the last portion of Robert's rule where you just have no one useful in council and no one who can curb the ambitious people. Because Otto does, at least he might be in the king's ear, but he's making sure that there's not 6 other people also as much in the king's ear. Like he's at least kind of keeping governance somewhat together.
And maybe it's just in the nature of being a hand. If you're not a hand who's from the family, that you're, in the king's ear and plotting for your family's advancement. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's unrealistic. Just one final comment before we move off of Rhaenyra, that I do think it's very deliberate, probably, to show her covered in blood at the end, partly just to show viscerally she's much more queenly than her father. She's much more willing to act. But I do think that, and they commented on this in Dragoncast, it is interesting to notice that she is just so detached at the moment. She's almost like defeatist, like she's just like, they'll never let me rule. This sucks, it's unfair, but she's not fighting for it. And if she were to fight for it, maybe she would have fought for the symbolism of killing the stag and taking it to court, right? And saying, hey, this is what I do, this is what being king is. And I find that a bit of a missed opportunity for her. And in a sense, her father's her biggest cheerleader. He's the one saying, look, marry who the fuck you want, but you need to have some boy heirs with penises because these people are going to come at you. I can't stop it. I will back you insofar as I can. But your claim will be a lot stronger if you're married to a lord that they respect and you have heirs who are male. So his advice isn't invalid. And he's almost like giving her a pep talk that there's so much I can do, daughter. Get off your ass and support your own claim rather than bitching about it and disconnecting.
But it's so hard to be a princess.
It reminds me of, what was that film a few years back, maybe a decade back, called Hustle and Flow? And it won an Oscar, it won some Oscars. But there was a lead song in there that was, the title was, It's Hard Out There for a Pimp.
That's the one.
And that was, and it's not a bad song. It was literally running through my head when I saw Rhaenyra being all like Kevin the teenager, like, oh, no one will give me a crown. And her dad, who, let's face it, is not the most ambitious man in the world, saying, maybe you need to like fuck someone and have a dynasty, There you go.
I feel like this episode could have been structured in a different way that would have made a lot more sense and given us more tension, like more like, oh, who do we root for here? If they had the conversation that he has with Lionel, if that had been on the eve of like when they first arrive, right? And not at the feasting and everything. And Rhaenyra were to overhear it, and there were to have been a similar exchange in the small council chambers later take place then before she goes off with Kristen, still not truly satisfied, asking because she smiles when he offers her to pick her own marriage to make her own match. But then she walks away without saying anything. And it's almost like, well, prove it to me somehow. If that whole interaction had taken place first, and then she were to have found the white stag and killed it, or I'm sorry, and left it alive, but for her father to kill as a test of, will he publicly declare, we should take this as a sign of my reign and my heir of Rhaenyra living long and prosperous. That might have been a better way to paint his support for her and other tensions in the realm without hyperly pointing to it through dialogue or having the most creepy character in the effing world in Jason Lannister appear. Like, I just think there's
we
a
do
lot
need
more
to
that could have
adjust
been done.
down our use of the phrase most creepy character in the world, because we do come from the world of Game of Thrones, so we know there are far creepier characters out there, right?
Peter File.
Well, the creepier, I think the crab
Lannister's
feeder
basically, he's just like a preening, vain kind of a guy, but in the vast
in
spectrum of
this
people
show.
you could get married to, this is not the worst person you could marry. The thing that freaked me out most about him was just the idea that Castle Rock is bigger than the Wall. I was like, what? Wait, what? Huh? That feels weird.
Right.
Bragging.
Taller than the high tower, and I was like, say what?
Yeah, exactly. Start making claims about your dick next. But apparently, according to lawmasters who've read The Worlds of Ice and Fire, it is known. This is actually true.
Hey, why isn't the wall 100 feet tall or something?
Well, so remember, the rock is not the castle. Like there's like a castle underneath a gigantic rock, right? So I think what they're saying is the like natural gigantic rock is taller than those things, but they don't actually go up there.
Isn't the castle
It's
on
a
top of the rock?
mountain.
Yeah, isn't
No,
the
it's
castle on top of the rock?
Isn't it
Yes.
on the bottom?
No, I think
No,
Castle
weird.
Rock.
inside,
Castle Rock.
actually.
When
What?
you look at the World of Ice and Fire, they have the carvings, and it basically looks like the Castle Rock has been carved from top to bottom with a little watchtower at the top.
I mean, I think actual ships, large ships, can kind of come under. There's like the large, like barge or dock or something under the rock.
But
There's a harbor. There's a harbor where ships can pass through.
Yeah.
Isn't that Lannisport?
No, Lannisport, I think, is like below, like down under the hill or whatever. Yeah.
In any case, he likes to brag, and but he didn't like his future wife to be covered in blood. Did you guys notice the face he had when she came and had blood in her face?
Yeah.
I like that. I very much enjoyed.
He's not going to cope well with childbirth, is he? That's what I thought.
Yeah. If we're already into Viserys as well, I just want to add one thing that I think they do paint Lionel Strong as being an honest man and a very giving, like, as I said, hashtag strong advice. He's still not my strong, but I like him more and more. I'm actually liking the character apart from how he is in the books, like how little we get in the books. My imagination of how he was in the books.
I'll add one other thing on Viserys. I kind of wonder how meta the setup of this episode was, like, to frustrate us with Viserys. Like, I almost wonder if it's like this high concept thing of like, okay, you're going to be annoyed by watching this man just not say what he means and be vacillating, and you just want him to have a frank conversation for 30 minutes. Like, I do wonder if that was like meant to build up our frustration with him.
Even if it were, I mean, I say this a lot about films when I review them. You can make a film about boredom that isn't of itself boring, and you can make a film about someone who is annoying without yourself being annoying. And I actually don't find him annoying. I find him deeply sympathetic, but I can see how you would. I think I do also wonder if it's deliberate or a failure of writing, that it feels like this is the first conversation he's had with her in 3 years since the last one we saw in the show. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that's a failure of writing or if that's their intent. And that's what makes me nervous. The fact that I'm having to, as I watch it, get taken out of the show by wondering, is this deliberate or what's the intent here? I'm not in the show, which I was in the previous 2 episodes. This one I really did not feel present. And I wondered if it had a different writer, or maybe I was just in a different mood. I don't know.
Fully agree, Bina. That was my experience as well. I was on board with the last two. I was very invested, and this one I just kept. There was a couple of like mundane, real life related things that popped into my head at a couple points, and I turned it off and I went and bought something on Amazon because I was just like not engaged, and it was the writing, I think, in the structure. It just was very disjointed.
Well,
It wasn't a flow.
let's just if are there anything else about Viserys? Because I would like to just quickly go by Otto and Alicent, just so we could have a talk about their dynamic right now. Because it seems it's changed a little, but there's still something there that I would like to talk about. So the hand Otto is sort of being pressured by his lord brother to make it official that his grandson will be heir, and then he just passes the buck to his daughter. uh are they trying to humanize him and trying to give him like has this always been just his brother's work, or is he autonomous in this does he have agency?
I have this one that they're trying to exactly mirror Anne Boleyn, whose father obviously did pimp her out to Henry VIII, but it was really her uncle, Howard, Duke of Norfolk, who was really behind it. And I know that George R. R. Martin has said that this particular part of the story is the most clearly based on that Anne Boleyn.
So
Back in episode 1, right, when he's about to go tell Alicent to go wear your mother's dress and go see the king, he passes that note and the message and says, take this to Old Town immediately, which implies close communication, I guess, with his brother.
Yep.
As far as Alicent goes, I do think that the scene that she and Viserys have in his chambers with the note, she does seem like a very good wife, very supportive. He throws the missive down in front of her and she asks, well, may I read it? She doesn't just start to read it. And I think that those moments where she seems very supportive and knowing her place and her role and just trying to be a good wife and a good mother and serve the realm are really undone by some of the other scenes where she's acting a little smarmy toward Rhaenyra. And I wish that they had done more to build up the fact that Alicent is really caught between a rock and a high place, excuse me, a hard place, with the decisions made by the men in her life for her life. I wish that they had done a little more to, just demonstrate that she's just a person with not a lot of agency on her own and give her character a little more of, now that she does have some agency as the queen, she's trying to be gracious in the situation. This is her very good friend. They grew up together, never expecting any of these things to happen. And could it have been portrayed a little more sympathetically and solemnly? I feel like it could have. So it's this weird juxtaposition between those private moments with Viserys and then the ones that she has with court folks and Rhaenyra are, I don't know, they just feel very non sequitur to me in this episode.
Okay, I don't agree again at all, and I'm sorry that I'm so Mr. Contrary.
Well, color me shocked, Patrick.
No, but seriously,
no, I'm not. I'm not bothered by it. You're fine.
Yeah, it's for me. She seems like a person that's caught in between a messed up friendship and what she knows, what kind of role she needs to play. She looks like she wants to reconciliate. She wants to, she goes to Rhaenyra to sort of persuade her to come to the the hunt without any more problems. She's not like lording it over her, but when Rhaenyra starts to be contrary as she is, she ends up being, as their relationship was before, she was also a bit pushy sometimes, but that was part of their friendship. I don't think that it's out of character. I think that because they have this weird dynamic now, that it's weird that you're fucking my father. That's what is ruining it, and that's what we're feeling. It's weird for her, but she does try to support her every time. She's like, well, maybe we should ask Rhaenyra about the what's happening on the Stepstones. Even when Viserys says something like, "I thought it would help mend the wounds that was between me and my daughter." She started out by saying, "Well, it did," and then he cut her off and start rambling about something else. But she's always supportive of that relationship and trying to keep them together.
Yeah, they gave her Aegon II's eventual line of what kind of brother steals his sister's birthright. She says, "Am I supposed to be raising a man that does that?" And I think it was interesting to present Hobart Hightower as sort of the pressure on his brother. Just to kind of back up, one thing with the show that I thought that they would need to do is present the Greens a bit more sympathetically than they're presented in most of the histories. And so I was a little bit shocked that they were so quick to just show that the Hightowers right off the bat are scheming to get Aegon on the throne. They're pretty loud about it. And even that Hobart is like, what is he doing saying Aegon second of his name? Even if he's the named heir,
Right.
he's not that yet. He's not Aegon second of his name until he takes the throne. And to say that, knowing that's one of the very few things that brings out the dragon in Viserys, like that was wild to me. But so I did feel like that was a little bit maybe not the direction they needed to go to like show them that way. But I also think that part of the tragedy of this show is meant to be that all these externalities tear apart Rhaenyra and Alicent, which is not present in the books, but I do think is a good story arc for those two, what eventually become pretty much the most powerful women in the realm. Like, and I think this idea of sort of showing all these externalities that are just preventing a simple conversation from happening is a pretty powerful thing.
I do agree with your first point there, Kevin. And as you were speaking, it kind of struck me that they could have done more to draw together the imagery and idea of Corlys in the last episode talking to Daemon about being a second son. They could have done more to amplify the fact that given Viserys's position and the fact that all the vassals and lords of the realm have bent the knee to Rhaenyra, it renders Aegon kind of like a second son. And that fear for his position is, could be painted more of a driving force for the conflict coming later. They could have done more to set that up as the tension, not just the regular run-of-the-mill schemes and plots. This story has so much more nuance. It's what fascinates us about the histories, right? There's a big chunk of the world book dedicated to this. There's how many companion texts from the anthologies that he's written on this topic. It's a very fascinating time, very, Plantagenet and, Wars of the Roses. And I just think they could have done better to paint Alicent more like a Margaret Tudor. Like, if my son is not on the throne, then what is he? Like, it's a very vulnerable position, and they could have sown those seeds in a little more clearly, I think.
I feel like Green sympathies are being entirely distilled into Alicent by having her start off not wanting this, not being the overly ambitious lady she's portrayed as in the books, where seems to be entirely lockstep with her father, which makes me interested as to whether there will get to a point where she is entirely acting in accord with the Hand. But yeah, we will see. That's what I'm interested in the future for.
I think we got to get to the point that line about if Rhaenyra takes the throne, she and Daemon will kill Aegon and Aemond and what's the littlest one, Daeron. They'll find a way to off all of them and Aegon's kids. I think that has to ring true, at least from the seat of the Greens. It has to ring true at the time for this story to work the way they've set it up.
Well, on that note, I think we'll move on to the last bit which is the storyline on the Stepstones with Daemon. So Daemon seeks glory and tries to win the Stepstones back. The campaign is, however, about to fail when he receives a missive from the king, who has chosen to save his little brother out of the mess he's gotten himself into. Instead, in a last effort to turn the tides of war, he offers himself as bait, and now the crab feeder is no more.
Holy shit. Do I have less words, but more just like emotional noises of what I think about this battle and how he resolves to do it. So, okay, first off, Daemon rows himself over to that beach as a lure. I'm gonna assume he was meant to be a lure, and then he goes out with the white flag, bends the knee with his sword under the pretense that these guys are gonna like take him as a prisoner when this is the crab feeder who's like, how do you even know he's going to take you prisoner and they're not just going to immediately fill you with arrows?
You know what I was thinking at this point, Michael? I was like, is the crab feeder signed up to the Geneva Peace Convention? Because I don't think
Yeah.
so. I don't think so.
Oh my
Unlikely.
god. And
All
yeah,
planted on
unlikely.
the stone front, right?
Unless there's the crab clause in the Geneva Articles. And then he starts sprinting faster than these arrows can hit him. And why don't someone else go ahead and tell me what you think?
They wore helmets. That's good.
But it's bad writing. In Game of Thrones, the penultimate episodes of each season, which used to have a battle, used to be so epic and so good and so well thought out. And this was just like, it was like playing a video game, but on the easy settings. So like, it's stormtroopers, all the arrows fail to hit. It was the most stupid thing I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, he had cover.
No, not
I
all the way.
I
He was
literally at
running
one
out in
point
the
was like,
open for large stretches where arrows were just raining down around him.
he's gone to the Prometheus school of running away from arrows.
But what was the tactic? Like, was it to immediately draw out these soldiers so that sea smoke can then come around and fire all these soldiers? Like,
Yeah,
it takes
and
forever for the backup to arrive and for the dragon to start doing shit. Like, ah.
Leading up to this, I had a big bone to pick with, and again, I think it's just missed writing opportunities, but Daemon receives the message from the king and he starts to beat the messenger, which is what happens when he's in the Vale and hears that he's named Rhaenyra heir. To put it here seemed so cold, and I did not understand the point that they were trying to make. Like, what is he mad that backup is finally coming? Like,
well, this is his war.
But it's just as
it's
you
in the
said with the Rhaenyra story, where it's just repetitive, right? So, you know, second episode, she falls out with the dad. He says sorry. They make up. Same happens in episode 3, and it's the same here. Episode 2, someone says he can't have something, so he goes off in a little huff to an island and does something stupid and has a little temper tantrum like a 2-year-old. And it's the same here. He's gone to fight a war. It's a bit shit. His big bro says he's going to come and help him out. He thinks that makes him look like he has a small penis, so he has a little temper tantrum and goes berserker. It's like it doesn't advance. We don't know more about Daemon at the end of this episode than we do at the start. Not
correct.
one thing. Not one
Okay.
thing.
I feel like I knew more about in the beginning of the episode, the man staked to the driftwood, having the crowns put on. I felt like that person, that extra basically, had more character developed. My prince is coming, save me, and then he gets squished. I felt like I knew more about him than I knew about any other single
And
character
worst of
in
all,
this.
I cared more about. I felt
Yeah.
genuinely bad when he got Jurassic Parked off the island. So, you know.
And
Yeah.
kudos to that actor, by the way. Can we all just applaud? What a performance in that short bit. There's your Emmy.
Yeah,
You earned
and
it, kid.
well, so I put a tweet in the chat about that basically it was like, and this is why you don't stand politicians about the dragon crushing. And I was like, yep, that's a true statement. Don't stand politicians. So I expressed my frustration with that battle and the choreography, and that was fantastic. Like, what did we learn about Daemon? Especially when he gets some more responsibility later in the story, you kind of see how much of what he does is because he's like this like intelligent, capable, but also dangerous Targaryen who's just constantly like sidelined and can't get in the right spot where once he does get that power, he's pretty cautious and wise. Like, we haven't seen any inklings of that yet, which is frustrating. So one positive on the battle that I thought they did really well, I really liked the characterization of Laenor to this point. I thought it was so Knights of Summer. After the battle, my friend and I looked at each other and we were like, it felt like they've given Laenor this vibe of like what we in Tennessee call cul-de-sac cowboys, which are like these rich kids that live in the suburbs and they turn 16 and their parents buy them a $70,000 lifted truck. They think that they're like big tough rednecks. I got so many vibes of that from Laenor, and I'm interested to see, honestly, if like next episode he has to like go smell the bodies that he burned and like reckon with what he just did. Even the way he said Dracarys was almost like a little kid playing a video game, like, and I really liked that characterization because it just reminded you that he's like this so privileged, like the richest family in the realm. He has a dragon. He just is the height of privilege, and
he's all wrong.
Yeah, get him, Elle, get him. But I just thought that rang so true, and it rang so Martin. It just rang so George R. R. Martin to what his character would be when you factor all that stuff in.
Wasn't it his idea to offer Daemon as bait? I think he came up with the idea. They talked about it, and then he said, "No, you can't do that." And then the whole thing where Daemon freaks out about a piece of paper.
Yeah, I think that's how it happened. It was kind of his plan, but I mean,
but it also shows that he might actually have some worth as a warrior, as a fighter, at least, or as a tactician.
I think you had that in the book.
That's if you agree that it is a good tactic, but I think not everyone here agrees.
If it works, it works, you know.
Yeah, it works because plot, but
he was smart enough to know that Daemon had like enormous amounts of plot armor. He was like, "We'll just send this guy in."
Well, I mean, hey, he might have been willing to risk Daemon's life too.
Yeah,
he may have been. Hey, that's one less dragon rider to contend with as my family vies for power. But I don't think it's necessarily a terrible plan. It's just the way they did it in the show, and why was he not like directly above, like in the clouds, watching what happened, or somewhat. Like, he just should have been closer by to get there faster, but they strung it out for drama. And y'all see, Smoke is so pretty. That blue,
so pretty.
And then he's got a little goatee. He's got a little. I don't know if y'all saw it. Like, seeing the stills, he's got a little goatee that sticks down, like fits perfectly with the cul-de-sac cowboy vibe.
He had a distinctive face to the other dragons we've seen so far. That was nice.
I like to add for a short that effective range of a medieval bow of that make what it looks like at least is like 100 yards. So they would not been shooting very effectively at him at that range.
Yes, but I think we know the physics in this world are different than ours.
Oh, is it?
It is known.
Yeah, but they also is that why they also only sent guys at Daemon 1 or 2 at a time? It seems like maybe sending 12 guys at Daemon might have been the move.
I will say to be
like, he's alone. I mean, let him come to you if you want, but why send warriors on the outside? I mean, it doesn't make that much sense.
Right. Especially after, in the last episode, Corlys trying to advise the king, saying, when you're at sea and there's a storm coming, you can go into it, you could try to sail around it, but you don't let it come to you. Like, they could have done more to connect those two ideas and make this like we're going to sail into the storm. Like, going around, it's not working, and we can't let it come to us. I don't know. But going back to Bina's point of the difference between this battle scene and like in the main series where we would always see these epic battles and they just felt so big, obviously except for that one with Robb in the Westerlands. I will say, to be fair to the show, they might be trying to spare as much of the budget for the rest of the major steps in the dance for that. So
a battle. You don't need a battle here. Why do we need a battle in the 3rd episode? Unnecessary. What in this episode, strictly speaking, was necessary to propel it forward?
Well, I needed the battle. Sorry, I needed to see some blood and some dragons.
Yeah.
So yeah, yes.
I was missing the nudity. Where was the nudity?
I did not want the nudity. I just want dragon porn.
I'd much
So
rather have boobies than battles.
okay,
I would
well,
too.
Oh,
This episode was as useless as nipples on a breastplate.
uh,
yes,
Did
which
y'all
would be
have fun
helpful.
listening to the after show where they were explaining what Daemon was thinking and what he was going through and how this was showing the evolution of his character? And I was just like, whatever.
Yeah, they've drunk their own Kool-Aid, haven't they?
Oh
Talking
my
shit, so
god.
they just, and that really is worrying. I mean, that's worrying for future
And
episodes.
that's so like D&D right there. That's like classic them after season 5. Like if you have to watch the post-show thing to understand the way the episode was put together, you have a problem.
Yeah, and that's my point. That I spent so much of this episode wondering how and why. It's evidently not working for me. Is there going to be a time jump between this episode and the next one?
likely.
Yeah, there'll have to be some. I think that is part of what's weird about this season too. Is like basically the Rogue Prince covers, and sort of this part of Fire and Blood is several chapters that cover like 25 years, right? And then, or like a chapter or two that cover 25 years, and then the Princess and the Queen is a story that's 2 years long that will probably be like the remaining 3 seasons. So I think to Hannah's point, that is a weird format to like sort of have this almost like anthology feel to season 1, and then it'll get a lot more condensed after that.
Are we going to come into the next episode? I was wondering this as I finished it. I'm like, Jesus, are we going to come in on the next deal and Rhaenyra and Daemon are already together? Like, or are we going to see that?
Well, no, there's some
Have
things
we
that have to
watched the
happen before
trailer?
that.
So then we can't jump forward too far, really. I will
Yeah.
say, for as much as I did not like this episode, I still love the costuming. Well done. I really, really, really love it. I think
that's
it's
why it's
even
still
better
two
than
and a
some of the
half
stuff we've
lemon
seen in the
cakes.
main series.
Yeah, I mean it's why it still gets, the lemon cakes it gets, because it's still great. But I think I think the problem is we're so spoiled in this great age of TV, right? You look at the production values on Rings of Power, and I feel that it's almost become like table stakes. Like I just expect the costumes to be amazing and the visuals to be amazing now. We're just very spoiled.
The two visual things that I wanted to mention, though, I really loved Viserys's the black shirt with the black dragon on it. I thought that was cool. It was just like the texture. And then the other was when Rhaenyra was riding a horse that looked like Dany Silver, and she was dressed in all black, and then Kristen was chasing her on an all black horse, and he was wearing all white. It just felt very like chess or like Cyvax, like just to have like this reminder of this is a personal scene, but like there's also politicking going on that just have those two colors like alternating like that created a very visual representation of the way personal and politic combine in this world.
Yeah, I think the long and the short of it, really, like in summation, I feel like we need to see. I'm not giving up quite yet, but I really hope
Oh
this
no, no, no.
episode is not the tenor set for the rest of the series. I hope this is just a one-off, that this will be the low point is my hope for
It,
it.
it does
So.
it does amuse me though to see the gulf opening between Dragon and WolfCast, because they were so flippin' upbeat about this episode. I mean, they were giving it like 4s, 5s.
Maybe I should go over
That's-
there. So, thank you for all your very interesting points. It was not an episode of this podcast where we actually ended up being in agreement. I think that there is as you just said, Bina, there is a divide in opinion, not just between Dragon and WolfCast, but maybe also a slightly dissent within the WolfCast ranks. Hopefully, we will be able to unify for the next episode, if it shows to be less divisive at least. But on that note, why don't we just end it with an Aru? And if you want to join into the discussion, you can find us on Discord. You can also, if you're really keen, you can also try to say that you want to join next episode or one of the future episodes that we have here. We are a very welcoming community, and we enjoy everyone's input.
Patrick, I just wanted to say thank you for hosting and for doing up the show notes. I appreciate you.
Yeah, massive thank you, Patrick, for taking over last minute and for imposing far more order on it than I would have done. So really appreciate it.
I do like order.
By the way, there is another little cute bit in the episode, or maybe the most cute bit was when Sir Kristen Cole is just thanking Rhaenyra for making him a gold cloak, and that suddenly his family is now written in the Great Book, and that's such a major moment for him. I thought that was quite touching.
I wonder how far they're going to play that angle of the rumors about them. I guess they're setting it up. They've been doing so from episode 1, but
yeah,
I don't know. It feels
together.
I don't know. Is that necessary? Like that's not even
canon.
canon.
I want Rhaenyra to have some good Kristen Cole
rumors,
sex.
The rumors are canon.
Yeah.
Isn't it Mushroom says that happened.
Also,
well, he say that they bang, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he says
no,
that
that's what people do, but I don't think it's ever.
No, it's not confirmed, but
mean,
nothing's confirmed in the histories. He just says, well, someone says this and the other one says this. I don't believe this though. So you can't be sure that it's not true at all. In any case, we need fodder for the rumors to be salient.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. I'm with you on that.
Please don't apologize for saying interesting things.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm really here today.
But Kevin, you shouldn't say more interesting things than me. That's one thing.
I mean, come on, Patrick. The bar's on the floor.
Wow.
I love it.